I'm Joanna Garzilli. You're watching Life Stories. Today, my guest is Chris Levitt, luxury real estate broker and...
It was like alien sounding.
Oh, I sounded like an alien?
No,
Oh my goodness. It's okay. I sound like an alien. Okay,
Sorry.
that's all right. Thank you. I'm Joanna Garzilli. You're watching Life Stories. Today, my guest is Chris Levitt, luxury real estate broker and TV personality. Chris, welcome to Life Stories.
Thank you. So great to see you.
Amazing to be with you. So let's start at childhood.
Okay.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a small town called Manchester by the Sea, Massachusetts. There was a movie about it about a year and a half ago with Casey Affleck. A beautiful oceanfront town north of Boston, very privileged sort of town and lifestyle. Beautiful, stunning. Loved it, enjoyed it. I was born a happy person, you know, very outgoing, excited, kind of came flying out of the womb and really sort of just did my own thing and you know, I had a ball and played with Barbies and dressed like a woman and did all these things thinking that that was sort of normal.
What was your favorite Barbie growing up?
Gosh, I think Malibu Barbie. Yeah,
yes.
yeah, definitely. Because I obviously, you know, later in life came out to California, but you know, I just led life sort of with a smile on my face and just did the things that I felt that I wanted to do. And it worked. It worked for quite some time until sort of society came in and told me, no, this is not how little boys act, and this is not what little boys play with, and this is not how little boys are. So you're wrong.
So how were your parents with you at that young age, and at what point did you realize, oh, this is not considered acceptable by society? I mean, today it's considered acceptable, but
Yes.
back then there was a lot of stigma.
Right, so we're talking about the early 70s, not to date myself too much, but that's when it was. 1973 I was born. So let's say by the time, you know, I sort of really started manifesting those activities and play things, it was probably like 75, 76. So preschool, kindergarten. And I remember coming so vividly, like I remember having the best day at nursery school, and I had painted my nails red, and I thought they looked so beautiful. And I came home to my mom, and I was on the swing set, and I was like going, whoa, like really high, you know, like going, just so excited. And look at my nails, look at my nails. And my mom came out, I think she freaked out, came out with nail polish remover and nail polish. I remember the smell of it, and was taking it off and saying, your father is going to have a fit when he comes home. And I was like, oh, you know, I remember that being the first sort of screech of a halt in my life where I was like, this is not, something's wrong. You know, this is not acceptable. So I remember that instance, and then I remember continuing my behaviors, continuing my play, and then I remember vividly in first grade, I went to a public school at the beginning, and I remember being there was the boys' girl line and the girls' line, and me being in the girls' line and being like, I'm in the girls' line, you know? And then people started really throwing slurs at me. But the girls were very supportive, so I was kind of okay with it. You know, I knew that something was wrong, but I had support, so I felt okay. And then as time went on, it wasn't until about like the 5th grade where the girls started turning against me too. So the boys and the girls started turning against me, and I realized that there was something fundamentally wrong with me in society.
Right, because you just said fundamentally wrong with me, and I was going to say, how did you address that in your mindset? Obviously, you've addressed it now because you realize it's society rather
Yes.
than that there's something wrong with you. But
Yes.
at that point, how did you strengthen yourself?
So I was very lucky, and I had, so it was 5th grade, and my parents were working behind the scenes, I did not realize, into getting me into this private school. So I went from, let's say, 100 students to 10 students when I went to that private school, it was sort of just in the nick of time. I'm getting a little teary-eyed just because of, you know, the nature of talking about this. But basically, by going into this private school and having 10 kids, you had 4 teachers, and everyone was so supportive, and they elevated my personality versus pushed it down or quelled it. So I was very, very fortunate to have quickly been extracted from that really negative place into something supportive and super positive. I don't know where I would be today had I not had that happen.
So you're fortunate that your parents really took care of you there.
Yes. They knew I had to leave that environment. It was too much. It was, you know, equated to today, a kid in the 5th grade being badgered on Instagram or social media, and just like, there's just no winning. You know, you just sort of either retreat or have the self-empowerment to get yourself up, or have a situation where you get plucked out of it and put somewhere else. And that's where what I think was just the really pivotal point in my life, was to go there. Because like I said, I don't know where I would be today if I hadn't had that shift.
Do you have brothers, sisters?
I do. I have a brother who's older, who had been also taken out of that public school to private. So we both kind of left at the same time. And you know, he could protect me only as much as he could. At that, he was 3 years older, so he was in a different campus of the school. So it wasn't like I had my brother, you know, beating up the kids or protecting me. I was really on my own.
And you're close with your parents?
Very, very close with my parents. They've been supportive of me throughout the entire process. I mean, you know, even though I mentioned my dad was freaking out, that was probably based on just, my mother was like, how am I going to explain this to my husband? My, you know, 5-year-old son is wearing nail polish. You know, she probably just didn't know what to do. I don't think it was a matter of he was going to disown me or put me away somewhere. I mean, I just think it was something of just, in that time, in 1975, 76, I mean, my God, you don't have anything to compare it to. You don't have anyone to call to say, is this normal?
Who were your positive influences as a child growing up in the media?
Right. So in the media, I didn't have any, to be quite honest with you. I had, fortunately, 2 grandparents that lived in Palm Beach at the time. Very flashy grandparents, which I loved. And they had lots of gay friends. And they equated sort of glamour to gayness, because they had all these kind of fancy friends and whatnot. And instead of looking at, I mean, the only people that I really knew, you know, that were gay were, you know, my mom's hairdresser, the decorator, you know, those typical quote unquote gay personalities, right? But then when, you know, you see down in Florida, I saw some successful guys, some, you know, well-to-do, glamorous, like I said. And while that sounds a little superficial, what I mean by that is that these were functioning, successful people that weren't the typical stereotypical people that, you know, gay people were known to be at that time.
As a child, did you know that you wanted to go into real estate? Did you have a desire also to be on camera as well?
Yes. So I always wanted to be on camera. I remember when I was 13 years old, I was, this is really fun. So I think around this time of the transition from, well, no, it was probably after getting into private school, but we were at Bonwit Teller in New York City, which was like the Bergdorf Goodman at the time in Trump Tower. And I walked in, and a makeup artist went up to my mother and goes, he needs to model. And I was like, yes, I'm going to be a model. I'm going to be a star. So we did, like, you know, the photo. We just never really took it to the next level. But it was kind of a good ego boost. And I knew kind of I had something special. Things would happen like that throughout my childhood where, you know, oh, he's this, I had lots of positive reinforcement for my looks, for my attitude, just a lot of great things. I was fortunate in that regard, you know, and I was very out there and kind of public. So how I got into real estate was that, you know, those grandparents, those fabulous grandparents of mine, they lived in Palm Beach, and they, my senior year in high school, I had a internship opportunity to go anywhere in the country to work in any industry that I felt I was going to go into in the future. So I worked for a top broker down in Palm Beach, Florida. And I knew at that point that that's the business I wanted to go into. Because
what was the biggest lesson that you learned from that top broker?
So he was working smart, as I call it. That's sort of my tagline, work smart, not hard. And he was working, 4 or 5 hours a day, making millions of dollars a year. Half of his day was spent socializing, playing tennis, playing golf, having lunch, because that's how he networked. Having fun while making money was my ultimate goal, and he embodied that completely. So I really admired him. I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And then at the time of going into real estate after college at USC in Los Angeles, I moved to New York City, sold real estate there, because at the time Florida wasn't really like a destination where you would do a lot of business and make money. There were only a few like this guy. It was still kind of your retiree sort of place to live. But sold in New York City and then came down to Florida. And then in 2014 is when the $1 Million Listing Bravo show sort of sourced me and found me, and I was.
How did they find you?
I don't know. I really don't know. I just got a call one day and they said, we're casting for $1 Million Listing Miami. Would you be interested in doing it? I was like, absolutely. They filmed me on my little test film, and within, I think, 40...
What did you have to do for the test film?
So they wanted to see me in my action. So at the time, I was doing this workout called Kangoo jumping. Have you ever seen those? You're like,
yes.
They're like rollerblades, but they jump.
Yes.
I did that. I take 2 baths a day, so I did a bathtub scene with on the phone and talking and doing business, and then I just had like a luncheon with a friend of mine, and within 45 minutes of this sort of tape, the guy goes, "You freaking got it." I mean, he goes, there is no question about it. You're going to get a contract. He said, we've interviewed like only 5 people. We have like 20 more, but I will tell you right now, you've got this show. I was like, okay. So I sat and waited, and then about a month later, they called me and they said, you've got it, and we're filming next week.
Wow.
So that was pretty wild.
So how did you prepare yourself for the show? You just went into it?
Went with it. I just said, you know what, and I'm glad I didn't, because the truth is that they wanted to see me do my craft, which was real estate. It wasn't like I'm an actor or trying to be a broker. Like, they just followed me doing exactly what I do. I do take 2 baths a day. Okay, let's film it. Let's film me doing negotiations in the bathtub. I do act silly. I do have fun. So they were just filming all of that. And I think that by being sort of natural in myself, that's what sort of why I did well on it versus the others.
What was the most challenging thing about being on that show?
The most challenging thing for me was after the show, which was when the show would air, and then the comments would come. And the comments primarily were positive, right? They were really great. Chris is funny, Chris is TV gold, I heard. Chris is all these great things. It was like, excellent. But then there were these mean gay comments, flamboyant comments, all these things that were just like, dig, dig, dig. And that circled me right back to what we were just talking about before, which was that pain of being in the line at school and saying, oh, I'm in the girls' line. No, you're in the wrong line. You're bad, you're bad, you're bad. So it kind of brought me full circle on a huge platform of saying, my God, things really haven't changed. I haven't fully taken care of that pain yet, because it was still so raw and real. And I would get very, very upset by the comments. I mean, I would take them personally. I would have to turn my phone off or shut my computer, because they just, listen, the best people in the show business get bad comments. So, it happens. It's not like it was just me, but still.
Would you say it's because you are an empath in some way, that you take on a lot of energy from others? You have a sensitivity?
Possibly, yes, absolutely. I think that I hit some chords for people, chords for people that maybe aren't as open with themselves. I was leading on that show like I led when I was the kid wearing the nail polish, right? I didn't care. I didn't really care what other people thought. I just went with it. But it created a little bit of a hard shell afterwards. And I think that that's why after the show, I kind of got into alcohol and partying a little bit more than I should have, because I started to kind of not be able to deal with it all, and then learning that maybe the show wasn't coming back, and all these things were really intense, So it was a very interesting experience, but I think that
Well, what you're saying there is, again, you're a TV personality. You're not just in real estate. You're doing luxury real estate where you typically sell homes around 10 to 20 million dollar range.
Absolutely, yes.
So people are looking from the outside and just have a certain assumption, but realizing that every single stage in one's journey, one's growth in life and one's personal development, there is always another set of challenges.
Exactly. There are, yes. So playing it out on the public field, also not having completely taken care of my inner self, I guess, prior to going on the show, may have also impacted that too.
So what did you do to, what happened for you? You're taking drugs, alcohol, you're suppressing the feelings.
Yes.
How did you reach a turning point and transform that?
So again, fortunately, and I feel like I have these, whether it's my parents coming in at the last minute like they did with the school, or the spirit of my grandparents, those fabulous grandparents I spoke about coming in, I have a feeling that I had a divine intervention one morning when I woke up or didn't wake up from being out all night. I just remember looking in the mirror. It was December 28th, 2016. I remember I was out at a fabulous event the night before. I had really tied one on. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I just saw red, ruddy, just not fresh vibrancy. And I was like, I look horrible. I feel horrible. I feel depressed. I had panic and anxiety about what I maybe said the night before, what I did the night before. I didn't remember much. And I just said to myself, I can't really live like this anymore. What am I going to do? And I called the ranch in Malibu, which is not a rehab. It's actually like you stay at the Four Seasons, and it's a 4-day hiking trip. And it's pretty glamorous and fantastic. And I just, I went on this hiking adventure knowing that I needed to make a change. I didn't know what was going to be the outcome, but basically, 13 miles a day hiking. It was raining, so it was a lot of mud.
13 miles.
13 miles a day, 4 days of it. And I just sort of by the second day, I was trudging in the mud with my poles, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to live like this anymore. I'm done. And I just made a decision to stop drinking and doing everything else, and went back to Florida and continued it. And then I thought, well, how am I going to maintain this? Because it's easy to say, oh, I'm done, but how am I going to maintain it? And so I was able to find the most amazing therapist, and I worked with her for 2 years, and I haven't gone back. And I feel so much more confident, more centered, more sure of myself, all these things that I never really fully had.
How does that come through now in a different way in the interaction with your real estate clients?
Right. So I think that in the back of my mind, when I was doing all these things, I felt like I am living a lie, or they don't really know the true me, because that last night I was out doing this and that. I wake up every morning with the most clear head ever. So much clarity, so much focus, so much confidence in what I am about. So that is coming off to the client. So when I talk to a guy who wants to buy a $20 million house, I can look at him in the eye and be 100% clear with him and say, I know what you want, what's sold in the neighborhood. There is nothing that I don't know. I'm prepared mentally and, with all the facts. I don't have a hangover. I don't have self-doubt from the night before. I don't worry that maybe he knows somebody that I was out with last night that maybe said something about me, and saw me dancing on the tables. All of that mess and noise and nonsense is gone and off the table.
When you have, the biggest purchase we're ever going to make is pretty much in real estate.
Yes.
And if with that purchase, that maybe that person has a lot of anxiety. Yes. Or pushback, what is the thing that you do to exude confidence and groundedness?
Yes.
Without coming across as arrogant and
exactly.
cocky?
So that is hard to do. My talent, what I think my best talent is making the other person feel extremely comfortable, right? And diffusing and understanding where they're coming from. So I am very good at reading body language, movements, all of that. And I'm very sensitive because I too have been there in terms of all of that. And, you know, reading anxiety is really important, and just sort of toning it down, talking a little quieter, slowing down. You know, I have a client that I'm getting amazing practice with now who's 80, and he's buying everything under the sun from me. And he needs things done very slowly, methodically, explained. And I'm getting like a graduate course in that with this man now. It's great.
I love it.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my last question. What do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for my honesty, and I would love at some point to write a book about my journey and how, you know, I overcame all of this adversity and how I can help other people. I would love to have something in print rather, that lasts forever, that people can refer back to, that says, you know what, I can also be successful and not have to worry, and come out of adversity and bullying.
You are a beautiful example of that, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm Joanna Garzilli. You're watching Life Stories. Today, my guest was Chris Levitt, luxury real estate broker and TV personality. You can binge watch all the episodes of Life Stories at lifestoriestelevision.com, and you can also download the EverTalk app to see all the other fantastic shows at getevertalktv.com. Thanks for watching. Tune in next time.